Welcome into the Old North State Sports Show, folks. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and following along, subscribing. And folks that are audio-only listeners, you may be very confused as to why we're not calling this the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. Because, hey, that's what we've been. That's how we publish. Well, folks, we are going through a major rebrand so that I can start talking about all things sports. And primarily, of course, Panthers, college football. Don't worry, Panthers content is staying the same. But this is a podcast episode, and I'll have a lot of YouTube followers. You can still listen to me wherever you get your podcasts. We do one episode per week. That will be picking up as we introduce college football content. But let's get right into it, folks. Lots of Panthers news today, including news related to some former Panthers or a former Panther coach in particular. Today's show, we're going to talk about the new coaching hires for the Carolina Panthers. Give our kudos to Steve Wilks, his job landing with the New York Jets. And then I have a question for Panthers fans, and it's centered around whose draft is this? We'll get into what that means in a little bit. If you want a teaser, is this Dan Morgan and Dave Canales' draft? Or is it Ejiro Evero? And I will talk more about that when we get there. And Xavier Legette. Seems like he is the topic of discussion everywhere we turn. I saw a tweet. I had to respond to it. It was clickbait. It was cherry picking. It got people engaged, which is what the guy wanted. But I had to give my 2 cents on it because that's what we do. Exciting show for you guys. And again, if you are here, please hit that subscribe button. But without further ado, you're here to hear Panthers. So let's jump right in, folks. Kicking things off, coaching hires reported by Mike K. Mike K is a good friend of the show. Going to plan to have him back, Alex Zetlow back, a lot of the guys that have been on here before. But let's talk about it. He posted the Panthers plan to add former Broncos safety and Chargers defensive coordinator Ronaldo Hill to the defensive staff. A league source confirms. He did mention that there is no position finalized for Hill. This was an additional tweet that I did not post. Yeah, actually, it's right here. If I could just read, be a little bit better, right? Anyways, he said he joins previously reported new outside linebackers coach HC Carter, who was on the Rams as a defensive line coach. But let's get to know these guys a little bit more. One tweet isn't going to do it. So let's talk about HC Carter. This is HC Carter. Welcome to the Carolina Panthers, HC Carter. If you are tuning in, hey, appreciate you. Appreciate any folks that tune into the show. We got players that tune in. I know because they follow. We have coaches. Shout out to a few. Well, I guess I won't drop names. I don't know if they want me to know. Or actually, I don't know if they want others to know that they tune into me. But enough of that. Here we go. HC Carter. This is his bio directly from the Los Angeles Rams. Let's learn a little bit more about him. HC Carter joins the Rams after completing his first season coaching in the NFL as a defensive quality control coach for the Broncos in 22. So if you are looking for a connection, there's your connection. Ejiro Evero. That is where they cross paths. And again, this was his bio with the Rams. Of course, he's coming to the Panthers now. Prior to breaking into the NFL, he spent 5 years coaching at the college level, 2 at Kansas as a graduate assistant and defense assistant in 2020 to 21, 1 at Hampton in 2019 for defensive tackles, and 2 at Eastern Illinois as a graduate assistant and director of football operations, as well as defensive line coach. He began his coaching career coaching high school football in Louisiana for 2 years. Outside linebackers. We need help at the outside linebacker position, folks. No doubt about it. I'm excited for this hire. To be honest, it's a little too early for me to tell you, hey, this is fantastic, or it's not. But we'll see. We'll give it some time. We need some help. Is adding a positional coach going to change everything? Is it going to make these guys that much better? I doubt it. I don't know. I personally don't think so. You still need to bring talent in, which is going to have to happen through the draft, free agency, a lot. to be desired. You can only coach up guys so much, or to a certain extent. All right, we talked about AC Carter. It's time to get to know a little bit more about your additional coach here in a second. But before we do that, I thought this was interesting. So Jordan Rodriguez, she writes for The Athletic. She covers the Rams. She dropped this tidbit on Mike K's tweet. I happened to see it. I screenshot it. I put it out. Speaking of losing AC Carter, she said that's a pretty big loss for the Rams. AC Carter is often behind the scenes, but has played a huge role in the development of the young defensive line. Remember Fisk. The last 2 seasons, great opportunity for Carter. Love to see it. Fantastic news. Shows that, hey, maybe we are getting a good guy, and I appreciate that. We need all the help we can get. All right, now let's talk about Ronaldo Hill, former NFL player. As a player, he played for the Cardinals. We'll look at his stats, NFL stats in a minute. Cardinals from 01 to 04, that's who drafted him. The Raiders, Dolphins, and Broncos. As a coach, he was a grad assistant in 2012 with Wyoming. Cornerbacks coach in 13. Pittsburgh from 2015 to 2017. And let me stop this so we can see the full piece here at the bottom, and that's Pittsburgh, the university. Miami Dolphins assistant defensive line, and 18 defensive backs for the Broncos, 19 to 20. The Chargers is a DC from 21 to 22. So this guy's a former defensive coordinator. Miami Dolphins in 23 is a pass game coordinator and defensive backs coach. It looks like he had 2024 off from what I can tell. So it was not coaching in the NFL. I don't know if that means he was a quality control somewhere, but at least as a coach, he was not. So you have a former defensive coordinator on the staff now, and a lot of people wondered, would Dave Canales want to hire someone that could take over as a defensive coordinator in the event that Ejiro Evero eventually moves on? I think whether he's hired, fired, something's going to happen. He'll eventually move on. Is there someone on the staff that you could promote? I think worst case scenario, someone on the staff that you eventually promote if there's a firing. Hopefully not the case. We do have that now as an experience. But before we dive into his stats as a defensive coordinator, let's look at him as a player. 607 total tackles, 6.5 sacks in his career, 5 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries. Believe it or not, 2 of those fumble recoveries against the Carolina Panthers way back when he played for the Cardinals. 19 interceptions, 2 defensive touchdowns. Now, before we pull up this next slide, I don't know if Panthers fans are going to want to see this. Had to go back, had to look at 21 to 22. How was he as a defensive coordinator? How good was this guy? Well, we're going to take a look here for the Chargers in 21 and 22. It's not great, folks. I tried to warn you. Number 12 in passing yards allowed per game. That was probably his best statistics for this defense. 30th in rushing yards allowed. Can I take a minute? I just need to take a minute. Oh, boy. That's what we need, is more coaches that can help us give up a bunch of yards. Right? More of that. More. I joke. Number 30th in rushing yards allowed and 29th in points allowed. So, you can see why he only lasted a season. Not great production. But we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt because that's what we do. Maybe the time off has helped. Maybe he's in a better position right now overall. So anyways, I'm excited. The Panthers are completing the staff. And again, his position has not been named. Don't know where he's coaching just yet, so I won't overreact until we figure this thing out. Not at all. So there you have it. Speaking of coaching news, coaching cycle, how about a former coach for the Carolina Panthers? Was the interim head coach that a lot of people wanted. Didn't happen. Went to San Francisco, was successful, got fired. We see the dumpster fire that was the San Francisco 49ers without him. And now here he goes, man, getting another opportunity, and I'm excited for it, man. He did interview during this cycle for the University of North Carolina job. We know that landed with Bill Belichick. I was a big fan of Wilks being hired. I mean, there was really no way he was going to ever come back here. It just wasn't ever going to happen. I love him. He's a great coach, in my opinion. He embodied the culture. He was what fans wanted. The players bought in. He took a bunch of average guys and kind of made them fight. Sure, he had some not so good games along the way, but he was limited with what he had, firing coaches along the way, doing the best that he could, and I think he was great. So anyways, let's go ahead and give our hats off to Steve Wilks. Well-deserved for the New York Jets. Aaron Glenn running the show there. Sounds like Steve Wilks is going to call the plays on the defensive side of the ball. That's one of the reasons he was brought in. He's smart. I think he's going to do well. And I look for, hey, you think about the pieces that the New York Jets have. New York Jets have a lot of good pieces on the defensive side of the ball. Wilks is going to be able to do some things there, in my opinion. And in a division, again, when you look at the Patriots who are still coming along, Miami, who knows what Miami's going to be up and down, and the Buffalo Bills. So good opportunity for them. I think their biggest question is Aaron Rodgers. Is Aaron Rodgers going to hang around? I don't know. Now, moving on, we got to talk a little bit about the draft. Draft is coming up. I'll take the banner off for a second. Now I have a question for Panthers fans or anyone that's tuning into this show. Whose draft is this? And you'll get to know a little bit more about this in a second, what I mean. Is this Dan Morgan and Dave Canales' draft? Is it Ejiro Evero's? Do these bubbles cross over like a Venn diagram and maybe they meet in the middle? Here is why I am proposing this question right now on whose draft it is. You look and you hear me discuss some of the things that I just talked about with the potential for Ejiro Evero leaving. I mean, at some point, it's got to happen. He's not going to stay here forever as the DC. And it could be much sooner than we think. It could be next year. I feel like this is his last shot, at least in Carolina, to get it going. I hope he does get it going. I hope he figures it out and it works well. In the event that it doesn't, do you think in the back of the minds of Dan Morgan and Dave Canales that they are, and it'd be kind of sabotage in a way, but not really. Do you think they're trying to prioritize the players that they want here long-term over a short-term fit that maybe Ejiro Evero wants? And think about it. A few years ago, Ejiro Evero, DJ Johnson, look at how that has panned out. I don't care who you blame in that entire scenario. One, Dan Morgan signed off on it. Go back and watch the tape. Said it was a good pick. I don't know if he was being a yes man or not. I don't know. Scott Fitter here, of course, and Ejiro Evero. And there we go, throwing up balloons for whatever reason. We're celebrating. Thank you, Mac. Thank you, MacBook, is for those that are watching as we record this. So anyways, I bring this up not because I think they would overrule him, but if I was in charge, I would be thinking about the guys that you want long-term, especially if you're the GM of the team, and potentially versatility if there's a chance that you may move back to the 4-3. Of course, we're not going to move back to the 4-3 with Evero. Dave Canales is buying in to Ejiro's scheme, but hey, always at least some point a possibility. So I don't know. So I'm just genuine. I had that question. I can't tell you. I don't, lean one way or the other, but it wouldn't surprise me if Dave Canales and Dan Morgan have more of a say in who they would like selected. Just my opinion. So anyways, fun times. Now, let's close it out. Close it out with a fun topic here. I'll remove the banner for those that are tuned in. So Ian Harris, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, tweeted this out and said, your first round wide receivers with under 500 receiving yards as a rookie over the last decade. And you can see he circles Xavier Legette at 18. So this is trying to show you a list of wide receivers that were drafted in the first round that did not eclipse 500 yards. I have a few things to say about this, which you can see there on the right-hand side if you were reading ahead and watching, or if you already follow me on X. But here's my thought on this. Number one, Xavier Legette finished with 497 yards. 497 yards. 3 yards short of 500. So to cherry pick this thing down and knowing that he's that close, like number one for me, that's ridiculous. You look at Excel, I will tell you it was not a great season, but it wasn't a bust. And I think he's kind of trying to put Excel into that category. And I don't think that's fair. Excel was thrown into the role as a number one wide receiver. You think about after Deontay Johnson's traded. You think about Excel battling injuries throughout. Still no word on if he actually is going to have surgery or needed it or not, or he's able to recover on his own. But I think it was just a tough season. He got thrown in. He's coming into his own. And again, I've had the conversations already about other guys that could have been there. And you could make a case that, yeah, maybe the Panthers should have looked this way or that way. But for the purposes of this, I don't know. Here's the other tidbit. So there are 44 wide receivers that were drafted in the first round over the past 10 years. So I think that's you can't just throw a list. This is what happens. You throw a list, people react to it, which is what he wants or what people want. But there's no context. Give me something. What does this really mean? So 44 wide receivers were drafted in the first round over the last 10 years. 18 of the 44, which is about 41% of them, did not hit 500 yards. So this means really only 59% of wide receivers drafted in the first round eclipsed that mark. So I just dude, I'm not buying into it. I understand people still want to nitpick it. The other thing you think about this, and I know it's getting into the fine details, but we're talking the very end of the first round here with this pick, getting back into the first round to make the selection, very close to being a second round pick. And I'm not saying that makes it better one way or the other, but it's that close. And so I'm just not going to get too worked up over it. Now, we will admit, as we all know, it is a big off season for Xavier Legette. It's time for him to figure it out, folks. Time for him to showcase his ability. So anyways, with that said, I think that's going to do it for today's show. This is Carolina Dad. I appreciate y'all tuning in. If you're still here, please hit that. I'm not even going to edit that out. So if you're still here, thank you. Bloopers and all. But for real, please hit that subscribe button. Y'all have a good night. See y'all later.